Hi, I'm Gray and this is Hub Guitar. Today I want to bring to you a challenging exercise that will help you with your right hand picking technique. One of the things you start to realize after you've played the guitar for a little while is that in the beginning of learning the guitar, you're going to pay a lot of attention to what's going on the neck and what your left hand is doing. And you might even think that that's really where the challenge lies, right? There's these big stretches and these dexterity things. But I think what happens for most players is as they get a little bit better, they realize that the true bottleneck to your guitar playing is not really the fretting hand, but it's the plucking hand. After all, that's why this is considered to be a right hand dominant player is going to play the guitar supposedly holding the pick with their right hand. Whereas if the theory goes, if you're left-handed, you're going to flip it around, you're going to pick with your left hand. So that's really where the true test of dexterity is going to be. Now when you're picking, the first type of picking you might master is what I would call maybe tremolo picking, up and down one string. And that's going to be the easiest picking pattern to learn simply because your pick is traveling the least distance between strokes. It's going down over a string. It doesn't have to go any further than the end of that string before it can come right back up and do another stroke. And another really common type of picking is going to be different patterns that involve two different strings. So this is the kind of picking that you're using when you're playing most scale patterns. You're going to be switching strings, but you're going to tend to switch from one string to an adjacent string. So here's a typical scale. Do you see how even though I'm switching strings, it's not like I'm switching a lot of strings at once. And that finally gets us to what we're going to talk about today, which is skipping over strings. So there's some really great exercises for this. One of the things that my teacher at Berkeley recommended I learn to do, and I recommend you try it as well, is to learn these classical etudes for pick style guitar. There's a whole book on it. There's a bunch of different etudes you can learn. A really great one is a Kreutzer violin etude, or you can even start to play some Bach sonatas and partitas on the guitar. So check that out on YouTube if you want to learn more about that. But those are really going to challenge your ability to pick not only one string but into adjacent strings, but also to jump over strings. Now you might have heard of string skipping in this context where we're going to play a scale. This is a really predictable kind of string picking pattern, and because the overall direction stays the same, it's not that difficult to master, in my opinion. And what we're going to talk about today is how to do a string skipping with some chords. So you're going to play almost like a finger style kind of chord accompaniment, but you're going to do a string skipping between. So it's going to look something like this. So that might sound simple and it might look simple, but it's actually really challenging. Now, I recommend when you're doing this, you pay attention to your right hand. So I'm hoping that you can learn these chords quickly enough that you can spend most of your time focused on your right hand. And we'll talk about some different alterations you can make to these chords if that's not happening for you. We'll also talk about some different generalized practice methods that will help you to master a technique more quickly. Okay, so let's start by looking at these chords. We're just going to do a C major. Now I added a G on top with my pinky. I just thought that sounded a little bit better. If you're having trouble with this chord progression, please simplify it. I'm here today to talk to you about the picking hand. So if the chords are bothering you, you must simplify them. This is a very important principle. If you're doing an exercise routine and you're trying to work on a certain muscle group, but the exercise you're doing is taxing another muscle group so much that you can't do it long enough to train the muscle group you're trying to train, then you're basically wasting your time. And the same thing happens on the guitar. If you're trying to address a certain technique on the guitar, please don't be stubborn and be willing to accommodate, make it a little bit easier for yourself so that you can actually focus on the thing that you're trying to focus on. I would say this is one of the major mistakes that a lot of learners make, is that they are stubborn. They think, okay, the teacher said this is how I have to do it. I must do it this way or I'm not good enough. No. The teacher said, straight from the horse's mouth, you have to adjust the difficulty of the exercise so that you can work on the thing you're trying to exercise. So let's talk about those chords. We've got a C with a G on top. Now I've got an F with a G on top. If you know the thumb over, this is not really that hard because you just thumb over the first fret F, and And then coming from the C position, you take these two fingers, walk them down. So it's like if you had a C here, the middle and the ring finger would walk down. And by the way, that pinky stays on where it was. And then you get the thumb over. Now, if you haven't mastered the thumb over, then it's going to be a lot harder. So we'll talk about some alterations in a second, but you can also try using a capo. That's going to make it easier. Then we're going to go to A minor. Still with G on the top. So it's actually technically A minor 7. Open, 2, open, 1, 3. Then we're going to go to G. And there's no B in my G chord, so I hope you'll forgive me, but you'll notice that I kept my pinky exactly where it was. So here's the chord progression. C, F add 9, A minor 7, and G with no third. I'm going to pluck the root of each chord, followed by string 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, back to 4, and 2. And that completes a cycle. So other than that first note where the root is, it's a fixed pattern that goes strings 4, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2. So it's a very consistent jumping over strings kind of pattern, except for that first note. And you'll also notice that I used strict alternate picking, meaning down, up, down, up, down, up. You'll see that it makes a lot of sense for this pattern because when I pluck string 5, the next string I want is in that direction, so I should pluck down. And when I pluck string 4, the next string I want is back in this direction, so I should pluck up. So it's designed to work with an alternate picking pattern. Keep that in mind. It's very important that you spend a little bit of time thinking about your picking. Generally, there's alternate picking, reverse alternate picking, and some kind of all down, all up picking, and then some way of combining those. But you want to just think critically about your picking pattern and why you're doing it, rather than just letting your hands decide for you. Okay, so let's talk about some ways that we can make that a little bit easier if you're having trouble. First, we can just take that G note, get rid of that. That's fine. And then we go to the F chord. That's kind of tricky. Well, if you know the bar chord, that would be fine. You could also just go ahead and switch that to an E minor chord. That'd be fine. For the A minor, you can also get rid of that G on top. And then for the G, I guess you could get rid of the note on the, or you could open up the second string. That would get you back your B, which is the third of that chord, by the way. Or you might find that it's easy enough the way it is. So you could have a simplified version that goes like this. The important part, again, is not the left hand. The only reason I gave you chords at all is because if I didn't, your brain would start to go asleep and your brain wouldn't release the learning juice that helps you to learn. So feel free to tamper with the chords and find something that works for you. Don't worry too much about the chords. It's not that important. Now let's talk about 2 different tricks you can use to work on any such technique, including this and really any other one. One is we're going to take one measure only and repeat it. So let's start with that C chord again. So you want to do that no faster than your maximum speed. You don't want to do that so fast that you're making mistakes. You want to repeat that a few times, and what's going to happen is you will start to feel a little bit bored. That can be a problem. So the way you alleviate that boredom is you count, almost like you're doing push-ups. You count reps. You go, okay, I did it once, I did it twice, and then you set a little target for yourself, like let me do that 10 times. That's technique 1. Do each measure separately 10 times, and then try the whole thing again. Technique 2 is to combine a burst with a rest. And the way you do that is you just insert a proportionate amount of rest after each measure. So you would do something like this. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. It lets your mind and your muscles rest for that one moment, which prepares you to carry it on. I think if you think about the way you learned most motions, or even the way you do most exercises, you'll kind of realize, I'm not really doing I'm not running a marathon where I'm doing a strong push for a long, long period of time. It happens a lot of times in bursts. So you want to kind of emulate that in your practice as well. You might find that you're a lot more productive when you do a burst with a rest. So my challenge for you, if you're watching this video, practice this exercise 3 times for about 5 to 10 minutes each time in the following week, and then let me know in the comments what you thought. Did it help you? Did it not help you? Or is there anything that you got out of this, or any suggestions you would make to the other learners out there? All right, thanks so much, guitarlings. I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video. Goodbye.